Recording? Okay, well, good evening, everybody. My name is Bob Sewell. I am the president of the Houston Archaeological Society, and I'd like to welcome you to the November meeting of our society. Our meeting this month will feature a great speaker and subject matter expert. It's Mike McBride of the Hill Country Archaeological Society, who will discuss the ongoing excavations at 41KR754, also known as the Crying Woman Ranch archaeological site. This is located in western Kerr County, Texas, on the north branch of the Guadalupe River. HCAA began work on this site in 2018, finding numerous artifacts not locally sourced in an archaic to prehistoric assemblage. The items discovered include obsidian sourced from Idaho, crystal quartz, vein quartz, hematite spheres, ochre, and ceramic sherds. Projectile points from the archaic site span the middle archaic to late prehistoric Toya phase. There is a Paleo-Indian component to the site also that Mike will discuss. Mike is the current president and board chairman for the Hill Country Archaeological Society based in Kerrville, Texas, having previously served as the president and board chairman of the Dallas Archaeological Society from 2000 to 2005, which is now merged with the North Texas Archaeological Society. Mike is also on the board of directors for the Galt School for Archaeological Research. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mike McBride. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks for inviting me. Really a pleasure. I kind of renamed this talk a couple of times, but I wanted to use this opportunity to, a group of other avocationals to bring together a summary of 5 years of work that we've done there at Crying Woman. And so I might ramble a bit. There's a lot of information, but I do appreciate the opportunity to bring it to you. Here's the site in western Kerr County. The environment is the upper canyon lands of the Guadalupe River. And I think Louis had asked me actually for a map, which I think might help you a little bit. Most of you, some of y'all I know came to our our field schools, the TAS field schools, a couple of years ago for 2 years, and the main site that was researched then was Kemosabe Ranch, Marvin Golke's ranch, there a little bit outside of town. So here's I-10. Here's I-10 going to San Antonio and then out to El Paso, downtown Kerrville. The Guadalupe River, the main body of the Guadalupe River, runs right through town, coming in from the Canyonlands and Hill Country to the west and the north. Kemosabe sits kind of within town, but in a kind of a ranch area here. But it as some of y'all saw, it was right on the upper terrace of the Guadalupe. When we talk about Crying Woman Ranch, here we are in Kerrville. Can you see my cursor, my pointer there? Who's ever?
Yeah, we can see it. We can see it.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you. So you got Kemosabe here. You can't see much of the river here, but the Guadalupe runs almost due west out of town. Here at Hunt, it forks kind of north and south, and this road 1340 comes kind of north and west out of Hunt, paralleling the river. There's about 4 or 5, there's 8 or 10 low water crossings out here until we get into this area. And so Crying Woman Ranch sits out here about 30 minutes out of Kerrville. Here's the site itself. The Guadalupe running here. This is down toward town in Kerrville. The site sits on 7 acres on this terrace. It's a nice flat terrace on the western bank of the Guadalupe. It's about and I do have some detail. So why Crying Woman? These are our landowners, Sandy and Mike Hightower. They're wonderful people. We actually got a message from them shortly after they bought the property about 7 or 8 years ago. They're relocated from Smithville. They knew some of the avocational archaeologists there in Smithville and LaGrange, that area, although they never had any property that they thought might be investigated. But when they bought this property, and the site itself is 7 acres of a total ranch of about 150 acres. They had heard that it had been partially investigated a number of years ago, and so they got a hold of us to come out and do some survey. The surveys were really profitable. There was a lot of surface artifacts, but like I said, when they bought the place, let me go back. You see the big house. This is about a 40-foot bluff in here above the river, and then their big house, sits at the top of that bluff, looking for miles in every direction. So this is Sandy's view from her back porch. And what she told us is that when Mike first took her out there to see the place, when he had decided to buy it, she began to cry, tears of joy. And as we all know, when Texas girls are happy, they really don't weep, but they can cry. So the name stuck. They like the name. They like the story behind it, and they're really sweet people. So here's what I wanted to do here is kind of follow the timeline. The title is 10,000 Years of Hill Country Archaeology Contained in This Site. So kind of starting from what we know of the past history of the site, there was a deed. This deed is 1873 for a farmstead. We don't know exactly how much property it entailed, but we do know that this 7 acres was part of it. We know that there were several versions of homesteading here, generally in these pink areas. Hopefully you can see that. And we kind of know that from some concentrations of artifacts that we have found on the surface are very shallow. So we start on the timeline, maybe 1873, to encompass the late 19th century, early 20th century. Here's a bit of a picture of maybe what it some of it looked like. We didn't find any bricks for a cabin like this, but there was plenty of other artifacts right on the surface. Kind of starting from the first, we have this historic glass. Some of it's probably early 20th century, this colored glass, and then some of this embossed glass. Some of it dates to the late 19th century, right at the turn of the century, and there was quite a bit of it around those homestead areas. We also found some of the salt glazed pottery from, and I am not a ceramic expert. I know little about it, but apparently the salt glazed pottery in Texas, I think it was really popular in Harrisburg and Houston when it first got founded there, and then salt glazed pottery lasted in popularity up through the end of the 19th century. But we do have it there in these farmsteads. Oh, sorry. This is a really big file, and it loads kind of slow. You got me there?
Yeah, we're seeing everything.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm out rural, so the internet hookup tends to hiccup every once in a while. So let me see where I was. Yeah, and then they were doing some of their own blacksmithing, because we have these horseshoe nails, mule shoes, square nails, some of which we think were made on site, although there's not really a lot of evidence of a big forge there. But it does help us date, at least the very latest history of the site. There was a lot of shooting going on in this in the area. We found a number of casings, not only of the older Henry rifle, which we learned, one of our members and one of our field crew used to be a DPS officer, and he's got a lot of history in historic firearms. So he has given us a lot of information of these older firearms, including this Henry rifle. We found several shells, and they're all the old style with the I'd never heard of a double firing pin, but apparently the older Henry rifles did have that feature, where it's a rimfire. And so we have this is what the new one looked like, and we could identify it from the head stamp, this H head stamp. So we know it's maybe 1870s, maybe 1880s, something like that, but there were a number of these there. Also these 5070 cartridges, there were a number of these there as well. So we're not really sure what they were shooting at, but they seem to be in clusters. Like these were found, in about a meter or two of each other. But we don't have any history of who was doing the shooting or what was being shot at. As far as the historic stuff, one of our folks did a bit of an inventory. We also had 45-70 calibers, 45-55 calibers. So there were a lot of firearms out here, and a lot of shooting. We just don't know what it was. This is kind of some of the artifacts that we found rather shallow. I think I consider this kind of a transition, because this is very old glass. This is not your typical bottle or jug glass or whatever. This is really heavily patinaed. It's real thick. We kind of have set it around a little bit, and nobody seems to know if we can identify this, but it is really, it's old. And what it is these pieces here are napped. They've got spoke shaves snapped in them here and here, got a graver nap, just like flint napping. So what we figure is prior to the 1870s, when before the first settlers came in, the Native Americans were camping here, and what they were carrying with them as these shards of glass, this old glass that they had picked up from the Europeans or something like that. But we just haven't gotten a solid date on these pieces. But we figure it is really prehistoric. That is pre-contact with they made contact with the Europeans because they picked up the glass, but there was nobody on the site at that point. So we're really not sure, but it was really, really interesting, kind of helping us date it. So when we started excavating, this has been our map, or our general map of prehistoric excavation. From the other map, here's the Guadalupe River flowing south and east here. Here's the front of the terrace here. There's one big mounded midden here, another smaller one here. And like I was saying earlier, across the road here, this whole set, there's another midden up here and one or two more that kind of follow. It's kind of a low ridge almost that follows the riverbank up this way. So this was a concentration of our archaic and late prehistoric units that we put in first, because we kind of knew that there were artifacts here. There were prehistoric artifacts and Native American artifacts here, and the midden was there, so it had to be prehistoric. So this is where we started putting in our units. We did some shovel testing here, which was also productive. So it was one of those kind of typical midden excavations that there's just a lot of them in the hill country. Then on the south side of the site, up against this bluff, this is about a 40-foot bluff here. There's a little high ground here, and this is where we ended up putting the units when we started finding paleo stuff. So kind of starting with kind of going back to the timeline, I found, these really, really interesting photos here and really good depictions of some of the timelines. As far as the late prehistoric period, they had the bow and arrow at 500 AD, ceramic pottery right around the same time. And then in the Caddo area, it doesn't show it here, but the corn domestication came in around 800 AD. In this period. So we do have a number of sherds of ceramic pottery here. We had Tim Pertola look at it for us and do some examination. We have various types. I mean, this was not one or two vessels that got brought in from one place. I'm not, like I said, I don't know ceramics that well. Apparently Leon Plains is more central Texas. This in Doss Red is more central Texas. The punctated, I believe, is Caddo. But this area, this site, was kind of a crossroads of a lot of trade items back in this period. Not only the ceramics, but I think y'all are familiar with these hematite nodules. I think maybe they came down from North Texas, but they're just one of those manuports that seem to show up in this period campsites and maybe very late archaic campsites. So we're kind of we kind of get the impression from that this is just a a little bit more evidence of the really shallow excavations and what period we were in. There's also this a number of pieces of quartz. Several of the pieces were here. This quartz crystal is really clear stuff, looks really like glass, but it was actually flint knapped off of a core. These are flakes, and a number of these have worked areas in these little notches here, and they're abraded in there. And so what I thought, what I kind of surmise is, I wondered if these are pieces that were wrapped up and worn on the body, hair ornaments or ear ornaments or something like that, because it seems like with the grinding in these notches that it was tied with a string. And then we had this other milky quartz here. Some of these were ground as well, maybe to tie up and wear some kind of costume or hair. But it's another one of those manuports that isn't, that came from somewhere else. So then we go into the Archaic period, with all of the hunting, the hunting is done with atlatl before the bow and arrow. They had a lot of earth oven cooking, which extended on into the midden building and things like that, as well as ground hot rock cooking on the ground. But these were all the true hunter gatherers of the Archaic period. I just found some more nice pictures off of Pictures Beyond History. What they were cooking, the sotol and the bulbs there, digging it out. This gives us a good visual representation of what I'll present in just a little while in the paleo area. Nice pictures of the atlatl hunting. Probably pretty much, if you've ever seen an atlatl tournament or whatever, those are a lot of fun. Some of the modern atlatl throwers are really remarkable. Some of the flint napping nap-ins that I go to also have atlatl competitions, and some of the modern folks can hit a paper dinner plate at about 50 yards. It's really remarkable, and it kind of gives you an idea of the skill that the ancient people had as well. So this is our first block of excavation, our main excavation around the midden. This is an expansion of about 10 units. This is north over here to the right. Right up here is the midden, the main midden. So we're on the south and southeast side of the midden. And it was your typical multiple occupation sheet midden. These are ground, this is hot rock cooking here, but there was a lot of occupation here. This is where we found the ceramics and a lot of lithics. They were cooking a lot. We found a number, big collections of deer bones, bison bones, a number of turkey bones. We identified these as turkey wing bones, so they were bringing in turkey as well. And then one canid, we couldn't find out if this was a dog or a wolf or a coyote or whatever, but there was really an interesting variety of faunal material that showed up in the late prehistoric and late archaic levels as we got going. These showed up in the late archaic levels as well. This is we only found 2 of them. These little flakes of obsidian. So we sent it to Dr. Glasscock up in Missouri, and his report came back that it was from Malad, Idaho, way up here, if you can see that. And so we worked with Tom Hester and his obsidian cataloging. And what we learned was there apparently is a fairly well-known trade route back in the late Archaic that came out of Idaho and down the eastern slope of the Rockies into through the Panhandle into Central Texas, and some of the stuff that was carried on this trade route was this Malad obsidian. I've not looked at his catalog lately, but he does have a number of pieces from Idaho, from around Texas archaeology that's cataloged. We have our ochre. Ochre is pretty prevalent in a lot of these areas where using it for pigmentation, body adornment, sometimes as antibiotics, things like that. We had both red and yellow. And this is the excuse me. This is the projectile point assemblage, just some of it, out of that archaic block, all the way from the Perdiz and Edwards. We had a lot of Edgewood. I've seen Edgewood kind of come out of Central Texas and North Texas, but this was that many of them was kind of unusual. And then the other transitionals as far as Frio Montel, and then down into the Middle Archaic with Bulverde, and then Marshall, and a big group of Pertinalis. We did find these 2. This is Uvalde and early triangular, but these were both surface finds. So like I said, when we got down into these levels, about ½ meter down, into the bison bones and Marshall and Pertinalis, below that, the soil was sterile. So the occupation probably started around 2000 BC, maybe 4000 BP, and went from there in this one area. About 3 years ago, in the back area, the Hightowers were putting in a drain line. It was an area where we really hadn't done anything, but they put a ditch. They got a ditch witch back there, and to put in this drain line. And so we, like good archaeologists who screen everything that comes out of the ground, we did get into the dirt that was thrown up by the ditch witch, and came up with a point none of us had ever seen before, but it was our first St. Mary's Hall point. So we did a little bit of research on that, and then we were prospecting around a little bit. We also found a couple of these Angosturas on the surface as well. So it was totally different from anything that we had seen. So we did our research on the St. Mary's Hall, got in touch with Tom Hester. He got real excited. And so we moved our most of our excavation back to this area back here. This is where the water line went through here, and this is where we started finding the Angostura stuff and the St. Mary's Hall. But it was all the surface, so we went ahead and put the units in here. One of the things we always kept in mind was there's evidence that the ancient riverbed kind of ran through here and then has worked its way to the east like this. So what we were looking for is changes or some evidence of geoarchaeology, and so we could really understand the difference between all of this archaic, this later stuff up here, and what we started finding back here along the cliff. So this is a couple of views. This is that low area that runs right through the middle. It is a flood chute that's partially filled in, but Steve Sotomayor surmised that it was probably only about 1,000 years old. So it probably started flooding, some flood water came through here at when the river was at flood stage, and it did bury some stuff and probably carried off some of the stuff, but it was only part of the site. And then looking south, this is the bluff to the south of us. It's about 40 foot high. That typical canyonland bluff that gets created when there's a lot of river water flowing through there for a long time. So this was our first unit that we put in, first block that we put in, units 9, 11, and 14. And over this map just shows the assemblage of St. Mary's Hall lithics that we found. The first half a meter that we excavated here over about 3 or 4 months. So you can see it's a pretty good concentration. We've had I think now we're well over 20 to 25 actual identifiable pieces of St. Mary's Hall. These are some of the better pieces here. A lot of what we find are broken bases, but you can see from the scale, these points are about as big as your index finger, and they're fairly thin. They're not great big guys. And so we've always wondered the utility of these points because they seem a bit frail, but there was a lot of them made. They appeared to be pretty effective because I kept using them. And the thing that made this assemblage excuse me, really unique is that on the majority of these pieces, these blades here, you have parallel oblique flaking, and the flaking tends to run from the top left to the bottom right, here, and here, and here. This one's kind of backwards, but on most of them, it runs top left. And going back to a lot of the other assemblages from the St. Mary's Hall site, from Wilson Leonard, a lot of other sites around this, the vast majority of St. Mary's Hall points are flint knapped in the opposite direction, from the top right to the bottom left. We've had long talks with Tom Hester about that, and he said this is totally unique to a lot of the assemblages in Texas. So this is continuing on in that unit, and in unit 14, we got down to about 60, 65 centimeters here. And this FCR started appearing. We cleaned it off and pedestaled it, and down to about a meter. And so this is what it was. This is one of those open air hot rock cooking, basically a barbecue griddle. It was left, it was maybe used once or twice. It's still intact the way they left it. We know that, a lot of these stone elements are fractured. They're heat fractured in place. right here and over here. So basically this was used maybe once or twice or whatever. And then they got up, excuse me, they got up and walked away from it. But it did have a really good section of charcoal under it. And I'll talk about that in a second. In the rest of the, here's the griddle. Here's the overhead of it. Here's the griddle. Here is the part of the assemblage of St. Mary's Hall lithics that we found here. And then we also had several areas, we had several samples of buffalo bone or bison bone in the unit as well, which is up here. We got introduced to Dr. Mary Prendergast, who was really nice to us. She did a little bit of workup on this and did determine that this is Bison antiquus. We did send the bone off to be dated, and we did get dates back on it. So this is a general arrangement of some of the diagnostic stuff in block 1. So here are the dates. The Bison antiquus bones came back at 10,006 to 10,003. And then the griddle charcoal, which is only about 1.5 meters from it, came back at 10,004 to 10,002. So we feel really pretty secure that this, here's the profile, that the activity going on here is right well within the Paleo-Indian period. I think Dr. Schaefer and Hester from this evidence are pretty secure on the date now of St. Mary's Hall at about 10,200, because this is the best in situ evidence of any dating that's been done St. Mary's Hall ever. So we're really happy to have contributed that. But like you can see, there seems to be a little bit of mixing, but with a lot of the grouping that we have here of the St. Mary's Hall stuff, we're pretty secure there. We moved the operation over about 8 meters to another block here in block 2. This block we started in 13, 15, 16, a 3x3 here, and then kept finding stuff. So we have now expanded it out to about a 4x6 block here, which is block 2. So here's a profile of block 2. There's a lot going on here. Very close to the surface, we have an early archaic hot rock ground hearth here. Over here on the north, there was a huge scatter of FCR. It's really broad, very thick. It's not well assembled. There was a lot of mixing in here, so it's multiple thermal events, it's multiple cooking events. Well, we just can't find a form to it, but there was a lot of stuff going on here. Over here, kind of a little bit beneath that section there's a pretty intact earth oven here that I'll show you. A little bit below that, and it is below the oven structure here, there's a small hearth here and another intact small hearth here. And then below them, right at about 130 centimeters here, we hit a gravel bar. So I'll kind of go through that. So here's the early archaic hearth. As you can see, when we expanded the units back here, we got about 10 centimeters through level 1 down into level 2. This FCR started appearing, and so we cleared it off. and you know, got it all cleared. So we kind of knew what we had here. So it's about 1.5 meters in circumference, or diameter rather. It's about 20 or 30 centimeters thick, which made it really, really shallow. But as we excavated through the matrix here, we found Bandy Point, and Martindale Point right in situ in the matrix of this hearth. And here they are. So we're pretty secure that this hearth is early archaic, somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 BP, just with the lithic evidence here. So over in the north now, in this area, this, like I said, when we got into these units, there was a lot of jumbled FCR. We really couldn't find structures. It was really, really mixed. But within the mixture, within the matrix of all this jumbled up FCR, there was another assemblage of St. Mary's Hall points here, and also a clear fork tool, a bifacial clear fork tool, which is also an indicator of kind of a transition between very early archaic and late paleo. So it did fit in pretty well here. So here's the profile of sorts of that whole area. You can see that we just couldn't really make any structures out of what we were seeing. So it's really hard to get any kind of stratigraphy here. And then again, the St. Mary's Hall material was scattered throughout the matrix. So there's a lot of digging, a lot of building ovens, taking them apart, rebuilding them again or whatever. So the dirt, as it was getting tossed about, some of the dirt did have these St. Mary's Hall period artifacts in them. We did recover one deer bone here at the very bottom that seems somewhat in context, and we did get that dated. And here's the date on that. It was at 9,000. So whether you have 9,000 here and St. Mary's Hall at 10,000, so we're really not very secure of the stratigraphy here, but we know that, you know, the St. Mary's Hall people were there as well. So this is the main attraction here. This is the big earth oven that is really associated with the late Paleo period. This was in the south part of the block. It's a really interesting example of this illustration here. Here's the center. Here's the center of the oven. This area here is really very much intact. There's some scatter here, but there are a lot of these elements here, down here, that are fractured in situ. They were left there. So we figured that this oven was not used that many times. And possibly the reason is this is very early on in earth oven cooking. So we don't have any charcoal out of it yet. We really don't have a very secure date. But in context, here is the early archaic hearth, the Bandy Martindale hearth that I talked about, way up, very shallow. And then in this area here, right above the FCR lens, right on top of it, there was a whole concentration of Angostura and Golondrina. And then toward the bottom of it, there were 3 other pieces of St. Mary's Hall lithics. And also, I'll talk a little bit about this lancelet that we found down deep as well. But anyway, we started uncovering this thing 3 years ago. We expanded over the last 3 years, and it's still there. We were hoping to work on this thing in October when y'all were coming down, but it's still there. It's still going to be there because we're not touching it. So here's the Angostura and Golondrinas that we found. They were all in one or two levels. They were all kind of in one specific area, just above the matrix of the FCR. And then you have St. Mary's Hall kind of below it. So these are the lancelets that I was talking about. We found 3 pieces. They're not fluted. They're too big. They're too big to be St. Mary's Hall. They really don't look like Golondrinas. They're a little bit, they seem a bit thick to be something like Plainview. So we don't know. There's some kind of paleo, there's some kind of lancelet. They're not fluted, but we do have 3 of them in pretty good context actually as well. And they're right down in the St. Mary's Hall levels. So we, like I said, we left the big oven alone, and we're going to do some pedestaling here. And right here below it, below the level of the oven, we found this little hearth all by itself. Nothing really around it, not much, maybe 1 or 2 FCR pieces around it, but it's pretty well intact. It's like a little basin. Not sure what kind of cooking or heating process that might have incurred, but it is lower than the oven structure. And it also had 2 of the 3 lancelets on either side of it in the same levels. We do have charcoal out of the little basin here. It's going to the lab in a week or 2, so we'll hopefully get a date on this. So here's the we kept going. Here's the hearth that we just saw. There was another hearth right here that was a little bit below it. This is about 120, 125. This is at about, this other one's about 130. Don't know whether it's the same living surface or whatever, but they're both sitting there by themselves. This is what the other one looked like. The one to the north looked like. It had these little blocks of the flat FCR, flat limestone that made some kind of a hearth. It didn't look like a hot rock griddle or anything, because when we kind of took most of it apart, this is kind of what it looked like. It had one flat piece here, and then several pieces that were actually propped up at about a 45-degree angle. And underneath here is where we found a big intact load of charcoal here, and then burnt soil. So we really don't know. It's all one structure, but we really don't know what they were doing with this. We did get the charcoal double dated. There's 2 dates that we got off, and both of them came up to right around 10-3, 10-2 to 10-3. And that's really, really secure. So it's right there in the middle of the St. Mary's Hall period, the late Paleo, the middle to late Paleo. So we're pretty secure on that. What we found is that it was probably part of a living surface. Excuse me. It's probably part of a living surface, because you had this. Here's where that hearth was, that small hearth that we can't figure out what it was. And then on this surface, in this level, there were a whole collection of flake tools here. But what we've come down on here is the top of a gravel bar. We really didn't know what we had, so had Craig and Ed, our two fabulous diggers, down there with chopsticks, because this is all clay. This is all really pretty nasty clay. So they teased out these surfaces here, and it was just gravel. So we started another unit to get through it. And so here's what we ended up with. We put in another unit to go ahead and get through the gravel. Here's the two hearths. There were some flake tools associated with them, and then right below it, there was a broken mono and another flake tool. And this is the gravel matrix here. It's about a ½ meter thick. And here's, how we sorted it out. But the thing is, as it's coming out of the ground, it's not sorted. So I talked to Charles Frederick about it, is this one event? Is it many events? Because, the bigger stuff is not on the bottom. The smaller stuff is not on the top, like you might expect. But this is something that he's going to work on this with us to try to figure out what this is. And I didn't mention it, but this gravel bar also is seen in the bottom of block 1, 8 meters away. But within the matrix of all of this rock, there were artifacts. There were some flake tools here, and then there was this scraper right here, right in the middle of some of the pebbles. This is a kind of an ovoid side scraper. You see some of these in the literature, and we're not rushing into this, but these are scrapers from Galt. These are Clovis scrapers from Galt. We didn't clean this off because we may try to get residue analysis on this from the stuff that's adhering to it. But it's one big flake. It's one big uniface. There was an overshot attempt here, and then the other side is sharpened, kind of like these, where you have these ovoid kind of guys here. You got overshot on them. They're kind of turtled back like this, and then one edge of them right here and here is sharpened to make the scraper. So it's looking really interesting. There's a lot more we need to do here. And then at the very bottom, the gravel seems to play out at about 180, and we found this core right at that margin there, along with another flake tool. And this is what it looks like here. This is 3 views. It's a kind of a funky chert nodule. The top of it has gotten knocked off to make platforms to take these prismatic flakes off of here. This is a core from Galt. You can't see the other side of it, but the same thing. The top of it was knocked off to create these platforms, and prismatic flakes were taken off. This piece of chert is not all that great. They may have tested it, but what we do know is that this piece here is older than 10-2, much deeper than the St. Mary's Hall layer. So there's limited choices of what it could be, what date it could be, that's older than that. So here's, after the last rain, we did a little cleanup. This is what block 2 looks like. This is the deep unit that we put down to 2 meters. And so here's what we got. In 2 meters, here is the early archaic hearth up here, the big jumble of FCR, but with St. Mary's Hall mixed all the way through it. We've got the intact earth oven a little bit below it. Here's Golondrina and Angostura on top of it. some St. Mary's Hall kind of within it and below it, and then these unfluted lancelets down below it, and these little hearths sitting all by themselves below it as well. This is the hearth here that got dated to 10,250. That one that got double dated. And then we've got the gravel layer that does have lithics in it, and hopefully we're through that now at 2 meters, and we can keep going. So we've got it, dating from 6,000 to 10,250, probably earlier than that. But really what it struck me was with this profile here, this is kind of the profile of the advent of earth oven cooking, the transition, because you got 10,250 here with a griddle on the other side that's dated at the same point, and then right above it you've got this big, pretty intact earth oven here, and then earlier or later, that is, early archaic stuff happening above it. So what I'm proposing is that this is kind of a snapshot of trying to find some of the very earliest earth oven cooking, at least in the hill country. But like I said, we do have there's a lot of mixing here. So we're gonna work a lot on the stratigraphy. So I wanted to acknowledge Mike and Sandy. They've been great people. Mike's words to us is he's amazed at what we're doing, and we can do it for as long as we want to. So we're not working in the dark. We do have a lot of good professional advisors and a lot of disciplines helping us out. And I know some of y'all knew Steve. I consider us kind of standing on the shoulders of giants, and he got the thing started, and we've had a really, really great crew out there. So thank y'all. Hope it's been interesting, and I'll be really happy to take questions.
Mike, this is fascinating. Your work is really interesting and impressive. Thank you. The lithics are fascinating as well, and we do have some questions for you. Jack Farrell says one of your slides showed some St. Mary's Hall points, and he was wondering if he sees some overshot flaking on them. I'm not sure if you can pull up that slide again, or if you can just speak to that.
Yeah, don't make anybody dizzy. Right here. No, overshot flaking really only applies to bifacial reduction of cores and bigger bifaces. This is all pressure flaking with hand tools.
Okay.
Hope y'all can see that. Yeah. All of this, and here's Sergio's drawings of some of the pieces to really show the flaking. But overshot reduction is really it's really for more of a stage 3 to 4, 3 to 4 to 5 stage biface in the Clovis period.
Okay. And then Bob Sewell wonders what your conclusions are, if any, regarding the type of site you're looking at here: manufacturing, trading, food prep, what? Just living?
All of the above.
All of the above. Okay.
What is missing, although we've got a pretty good idea of as usual, especially the paleo and archaic people, were using some really, really high grade chert. All around, there are chert deposits all around us. I think, and I've identified, typically, a lot of it is kind of the brown translucent root beer stuff, but there's another type it's not translucent. It's more of a butterscotch looking thing with a little bit of creamy swirl in it. And I think unfortunately, I think we know where the quarry is, but the landowner's not let us get on it. But I think we know where it is. It's it's up on top of the bluff, kind of to the south of us. But they weren't doing any quarrying at the site. It was all reduction into tools. We don't have, we do have that one or two little deer bones out of the earth oven, but the thing is, those earth ovens are for plants. The meat was being cooked elsewhere. But it's there. The meat has to be there somewhere. But in that clay, it's real acidic clay soil that we've got, and so a lot of the bones have not survived. But everything was here, and there was as far as seasonal camping, it went on for thousands of years. Typically these even in ancient times, these terraces were full of oak and pecan trees. So this would have been one of the places in the fall, especially, they would have migrated to pick the nuts and to hunt deer, and in the wetter years, hunt buffalo as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. A couple of comments here. Early on, you were talking about the munitions you were finding on the site.
Yeah.
And I checked earlier to see if this HAS member is attending, and I didn't see him. But I don't know if you know Tom Knuckles. He is really well versed on historical munitions, Henry rifles. If you want any other opinions on what you're finding there, he's really well versed.
Okay.
And then it crossed our mind, or my mind also, that regarding the old glass you were finding, we've got our dear friend, and you may know her as well, Heather Para in Victoria at the Museum of the Coastal Bend. She might be a good resource on your old glass.
Really? Okay.
And then,
because what really intrigued me when I really started looking at it was, you do have kind of that historic glass. You do have, a lot of the decorative glass and things like that. Some of it's patinated a little bit. It's been out in the weather and everything. You've got a little bit of patination. But when you start looking at these pieces here, they are real different. They're really thick. They've got a lot of crust on them. And when I saw them and really started looking at them or whatever, it seems really apparent to me that these were hand flint knapped.
those are really interesting.
Which, yeah. Which,
We've got
you got either European or American glass that was picked up by Native Americans, and they made tools out of it.
That really.
So I thought that, but no, I didn't know that Heather was knowledgeable there. So I need to get a hold of her for sure.
Yeah, maybe just a guess based on some of our interactions with her. Okay, and then Bob Sewell has a question. You had a slide about one of your middens, and there's a diagonal straight line in the bottom right that caught his eye. Which slide would that be?
I think it was
one of the
early
maps.
on.
Yeah,
maybe about. It was a photo of the midden. maybe
Okay.
about 6 or 7 units there.
Was it the
Yeah.
sheet midden, Bob? The sheet midden?
Keep going and I'll tell you when to stop when I see it.
Is
Keep
it,
going.
is it that?
Keep going.
Is it that? Okay.
It was a view of the midden about 7 or 8 units big, you know.
Oh.
Keep going, keep going.
Well, yeah, no, I think I know what you're talking about.
I'm just curious. There was an interesting diagonal straight white line in the bottom right. I wondered what that happened to be.
That's a water, not this. Oh
Oh,
yeah, that's a water pipe.
it's a pipe. There it is. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No problem.
Before, years ago, we really had to watch out for this. There's been like back, I don't know, a couple of decades. One of the previous owners tried to put in a pecan orchard, and he laid a fair amount of irrigation pipe. And so we have chanced upon, we didn't know where it was, but we have chanced upon it, and actually, as we've excavated the little ditch that it was in, I mean, it was really apparent that soil on either side was disturbed and whatnot, and a machine had gone through it. So we had to, near those points, because there was a 1 or 2 more in other areas. So yeah, we've had to be careful, and I mean, there's no water in them, but the ground is disturbed. So anything that might have come out of there, we need to treat it as somewhat out of context.
Well, it doesn't look too disturbed, does it? Just the south.
No, it wasn't. I
South
mean,
corner.
this was probably, a maybe a 2 or 3 inch ditch witch, unlike the other one in the back where they laid that 2-inch pipe. But the thing was, we've stayed away from that area. We put the units, and we knew where that pipe was.
Okay, and I just wondered.
Yeah.
Here's another question for you from Debbie Eller. Was any flotation done? And if so, were any charred seeds or organics found?
We've not gotten that far. We have bags and bags of soil that we're kind of waiting, as you guys are. We're waiting for the right person or two to come along to help us out with that. But especially when we got into the paleo area, Steve Black was one of the first people that came out and looked at it. And in his notes back to us, it was, photograph everything and bag. It takes soil samples every level of every unit. And we have done, my shop is a repository of it. And there's, we have a lot of soil to go through.
Well, thanks. I don't see any other questions. And Bob, you want to take it from here?
All right, yeah, great presentation, Mike. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm sure everyone else did. Excellent.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, I look forward to meeting you actually in person sometime in the new year.
Yeah.
So happy Thanksgiving, happy New Year, and we'll hopefully see you later.
I have a comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Yeah,
Great job,
excellent.
Mike.
You guys
Thank
have
you.
been very thorough
Mike.
at collecting samples and
Right. Thank you.
detail.
Thank you. This is actually a lot of fun to put together finally. So,
nice
All right.
work.
We really
Have a
appreciate it. Yeah.
all right. I'll be in touch with you guys. Okay.
Okay,
Bye.
you take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Hello.